確か、漁師のノート編と警察のノート編で内容が全く違うと聞きましたが。
Hello everyone, my name is Michael SK and welcome back to Umineko When They Cry, episode 4. The previous video still has me pretty dumbfounded in a lot of ways. I've given myself a couple days to think about it, and I still don't really know what to walk away with from that video. Either way, here we are with this fine gentleman who is of the rich sort and also the freaky sort, and we're sort of talking about the message in the bottle that showed up on the shore by Maria, or was it actually Maria? And apparently there was a second message, I think. I think that's what they were talking about just before I decided, you know what, I'm hungry, I am done recording. Anyways.
さようです。このせいで、ロッケン島ミステリーはさらに面白みが増したのです。二つのボトルの中身は、どちらも事故前日から当日までを記した日記風の式です。しかしその内容は、共に前日から当日を記した内容であり、にもかかわらず、内容は全く異なったのです。
Oh, we got a life of pie situation.
まるでどちらかが真実で、どちらかが虚偽のように、あるいは両方とも虚偽なのかもしれない。しかし、始まりと終わりだけは一致するのです。始まりは、親族たち18人は台風で島に閉じ込められた。そして終わりは、全員が死に、黄金の魔女が蘇り、すべては黄金鏡に飲み込まれる。
Basically, everyone is dead and went to hell. The contents of both message bottles wrote about the events of the day before the accident and the day of the accident, but the details were completely different. Both diaries outline a serial murder following the epitaph of the witch, but the order of the sacrifices, the ways they died, and even the tale of the 2 days were different. However, in both, everyone died in the end and the witch revived, making for the same general plot.
あの島で何があったのか。唯一の生存者である後宮エバ氏が沈黙していた以上。
Which is heavily suspicious and most definitely annoying.
あの2日間の出来事は全てが闇の中です。この2つの日記はその闇を埋める仮説を、どちらの日記でも2日間を説明できる。しかし、どちらが正しいのか、あるいは正しいことが含まれているのかさえわからないのです。
Honestly, like, with Ava being the only survivor, you would think that the police would require that she cooperate and explain everything that happened to the best of her ability, but, I mean, what if she actually doesn't know? Or if that's what she's saying, she doesn't know. She was hiding away. She didn't necessarily know what went down. She just knew things were going down, and she dipped on out, and everybody died. Schrodinger's cat box, which has to be brought up in every visual novel ever. If it isn't denied, even a mixture of truth and fiction can be the truth. Through the media, these scraps of paper had of course been shown to Ava as well, but in the end, she never broke her silence. It seems to just be that she doesn't want to talk. And I don't think that would fly nowadays, like anywhere, because if that many people die, it is an absolute tragedy. It is a huge deal. If there are any survivors, they have to cooperate.
事件10周年特集を組んだ雑誌が以前大々的に取り上げたでしょう。あの仮説が今日では最も支持を集めているようです。しかし、面白みには欠ける。あの島であの日、何が起こったのか。それを考えるのが、ウィッチハントの醍醐味なのですな。
ウィッチハント？
ああ、ロッケン島ウィッチハントとは、この事件の真相をオカルトの側面から説明しようと試みるマニアの集いのことです。
My type of people.
後宮蔵書から謎の2日間。そして、黄金の魔女の伝説など、ロッケン島に関わる謎は今でもマニアの間で盛んに議論されているのです。10周年の時には、ニューヨークで国際コンベンションも開かれました。私も日本の代表として参加してきましてね。海外の熱心なウィッチハンターと様々な交流をしてきましたよ。 海外では魔女はとても人気のあるカテゴリーでしてね。参加者の年齢幅も、下は小学生から、上は著名な文化人まで実に幅広い。日本でも近年ようやく。
You probably don't need any more explanation, but he's one of the most famous Rokkenjima witch hunters in Japan. Even though I didn't ask anything more, he kept continuing on excitedly all by himself. Well, this is his thing. This is what he's all about. You know, past being a professor, probably having a shit ton of money. Like, no, the cult stuff is what he is all about, baby. As I swirled the thin film on my pottage, I almost said it wrong again. I was just mispronouncing words left and right in the last video, I swear. With my spoon, I shrugged my shoulders and sighed. Looks like researching about the message bottle really was a waste of time. No, if there's one thing I've found, is that the notebook supposedly written by Maria One-chan was actually written by a different person faking her name. And that person wrote up an occult legend on their own, put it into the bottle as though it was the truth, and threw it into the sea. I have a question. Why would they go to all the trouble of writing so much in order to prepare a suspicious letter like that? With a message bottle, there would be no guarantee that it would ever pass into anyone's hands. If their luck had been bad, it could have sunk in the ocean, never to be seen by anyone. Yeah, huge waves or whatever, a storm, and I mean, that thing is not going to survive. It's literally just a little glass bottle, no? And even if someone had picked it up, they might have not cared about it and thrown it away. Why would they entrust their confession of the truth to the sea with such an uncertain method? And why would they write up multiple differing tales? If there had been one message bottle claiming that its story was the truth, it might be reckless, but not impossible. However, because there were two, that made both of them doubtful. If someone was plotting to make out those 2 days to be the work of a witch, then they really did go one step too far. And because there were two, it suggests that an undiscovered third one, or possibly even more, might exist. In other words, two differing contents makes both of them harder and harder to swallow. But despite that, the contents of both matched in that they told of a witch in a tale. So is that the main point the writer wanted to get across to us? It seems to me that the only possible explanation is that someone who wanted to give rise to an illusion of a witch carried out this crime for their own enjoyment. However, the 17 people other than Aunt Ava lost their lives, and a vast wealth, or maybe even 10 tons of gold, not 10 guns, had moved around secretly in the darkness. It doesn't feel right for a confession occurring after all that to bring up this illusion of the witch. Even if we ignore the magazine's theories, it's very doubtful that the message bottle really was a diary. After all, the amount of writing was massive. It's hard to imagine that someone actually caught up in the middle of a serial murder like that would be able to calmly write it down. In that case, it's probably more realistic that this diary was written slowly over a long period of time up until the day prior to the accident. In that case, would it mean that everything on Rokkenjima was a planned crime? With everything prepared for over a long stretch of time? I mean, from what we've seen of the stories, yes, that whole family conference was actually set up. That was the prepared time. Like, even Kinzo was, totally ready to go. The fact that Aunt Ava left this world without saying anything is infuriating. She definitely said it on her deathbed. She definitely said that her reason for not telling me the truth was because it was her best way of harassing me. Yeah, by now it's painfully obvious. Of all the things Aunt Ava did to harass me, this was probably the last and the greatest. But thinking of it this way, it's probably doubtful that Aunt Ava is the true culprit. Of course, that's not because the handwriting on the message bottle was different from Aunt Ava's or anything like that. It's because in both tales that were discovered, Aunt Ava was included among the victims. If the writer of that diary was the culprit, maybe Aunt Ava was also one of the targets to be killed. Maybe Aunt Ava had survived because something had gone wrong. Because I hated Aunt Ava, I came to believe that she had to be the culprit. but the existence of the message bottle makes me suspect that the mastermind is a far more profound and unknown person than her. So obviously, I still have no idea what really went down in episode 3. It's really hard to tell. But the idea that those messages were prepared in advance is pretty interesting. Given that no one was really expected to, win, to actually find the gold, to figure out the epitaph. The riddle had been solved by Ava. She was able to figure it out, whatever it was. We actually still don't even know. Rosa also figured it out, but Ava was first. So she was in the clear. She won the game. But everyone still died. There were 6 that were killed before her, but then everybody died after her. So the story had to continue onward. What was planned had to continue, but she had immunity. Now, if that doesn't necessarily work out, what else could? The idea that something went wrong instead of things going right for Ava could be a pretty good hint there. I looked at the clock. I've heard more than enough. It's time. As he continued to speak fervently, I suggested that I wanted to bring this discussion to a close. He seemed to be aware that he had gotten excited and talked too much, so he quickly accepted this.
今日は本当にありがとうございました。貴重なお話が聞けたと思います。
いえいえ、ウィッチハントの新しい仲間に若いお嬢さんを迎えできて本当に楽しかったです。今日は歌詞を変えてしまったのでお見せできなかった貴重な資料がいくつもあります。次の機会の時にはぜひそれをお見せしましょう。
ありがとう先生。最後に聞いてもいいですか？
はい、何でしょうか。
先生はどうして魔女に、いえ、神秘学や悪魔学に興味を？
それを言われるとお恥ずかしい。
Nah, tell us. We
不
gotta
思議
know.
な力が使えたなら、意地悪なガキ大将にも負けないのに。
Okay, no, that is embarrassing. You can stop now.
という子供の頃の妄想が、そのままライフワークになってしまっただけです。未知なる力への憧れというプリミティブな願望は、今も昔も普遍的ですからな。
I mean, yeah, ignorance is bliss, but also trying to figure out the mysteries of the world and maybe finding some stuff out that completely change your perspective of everything, maybe even. That is in its way pretty interesting, but I don't know, to dedicate so much to something that probably doesn't exist is kind of a hard pill to swallow.
先生は
But obviously this is fiction, so
魔女になりたいですか？
I don't know.
思うがままに魔法を使ってみたいという夢を今も？
もちろんですとも。この年になり、そういうものが実在しないと理屈では分かっていても、
But
それでもなお、空を飛んでみたい、鉄くずを黄金に変えてみたいという子供のような夢は忘れられずにいます。学生たちにはどうか内密に。
私が実は魔女だと言ったらお信じになります？
女は魔女であるというのが私のささやかな女性経験からの持論です。
Okay, be very careful with whom you actually tell that to in the future. Just saying, just saying. Ange snorted at the old professor, who must have been an earnest scholar with barely any experience with women.
そうそう。最後にもう一つだけ質問を。
No, that last question was your last question.
先生はメッセージボトルの実物をご覧になったことは？
ありますとも。
では、その筆跡についてもお詳しいですか？
もちろん、その道の専門家ではありませんが、メッセージボトルの筆跡に関してだけは、日本で最も詳しいと自負していますとも。
At that point, Ange set a book on the desk with a thud.
これは初めて見るものです。
He prided himself on his thorough knowledge of all literature related to Rokkenjima, and he looked bewildered at this binding that he hadn't seen before. Ignoring him, Ange silently flipped through the pages, opening to one of them, and showed him. On that page was a handwritten paragraph beginning with, "To my beloved witch apprentice." And at the end, there was a signature in katakana, that said, Beatrice.
それは...
The instant he glanced at it, his face went pale. She knew the answer before asking, but Ange asked it aloud anyway.
このページに記されている文章の筆跡はメッセージボトルの筆跡と一致しますか？
It'd probably be more helpful to do a side by side.
いや、持ち帰って詳しく調べないことには。失礼だが、この本は一体どこで？
The man stretched out his hand, but Ange pulled it back, as though telling him not to touch it with his filthy hands.
ありがとう。その反応だけで結構です。今日はありがとうございました。これ、お約束の謝礼です。
As she stood up, clutching Maria's diary, Ange carelessly tossed a wad of 10,000 yen notes wrapped with a strap of paper onto the table. As Ange turned her back to him and made to leave, the man raised his voice as though clinging to her. Oh, he's crazy. But Ange didn't stop walking.
お願いだ。その本は一体。謝礼はいらない。その本を見せてくれ。
私とあなたはウィッチハントの同志だけど、求める深さが違うみたい。あなたが楽しんでるのは猫箱の外側。そして私が知りたいのは猫箱の内側。そしてこの一冊は、その猫箱を開く鍵ね。あなたには過ぎてるわ。じゃあね。Goodbye, gentlemen. Have a nice day.
Her and her goddamn English.
すまねえさん。
His voice didn't reach her. She had already joined up with Amakusa and gone into the car. And made that whole, that whole show for everybody else there in the restaurant. Because that was a rich people's restaurant, no?
最後の最後にね。やっぱりそうだった。メッセージボトルを記したのはベアトリーチェ本人だった。
そいつはクールだ。魔女は実在するで決着で。
さあね。寝ていい？あのおしゃべり教授。きっと講義では自分の世界に入っちゃって寝ちゃう子続出だと思うわ。
I've had instructors like
ど
that.
うぞどうぞお休みを。
You really get a nap like no
うまく
other.
いくもんね。あいつ。私のことスマデラだと最後まで信じてたわ。
The Sumadera family had set up a web beforehand around any people Ange might try to contact. They had offered a reward to anyone who could take Ushiromiya Ange into custody if she appeared. Ange had foreseen that and had snatched it away. She had called herself Sumadera, and after cleverly tricking the man by saying her own subordinates would set up an ambush, so he didn't need to worry about it, she had taken him outside. So when the Sumadera family pursuers reached the professor's house, there was no longer anyone there.
家人の話では、午前中にスマデラを名乗る若い男女が訪れ、教授を連れ出したきり、まだ帰宅しないそうです。裏を書かれた可能性が。
Yeah, a little bit.
いけない子ね、エンジェちゃんは。そういう悪知恵、姉さんの血なのかしらね。あんなに名乗るのは嫌だと言ってたスマデラの名を気安く名乗ってくれちゃうなんて。そのうち教授もお戻りになるだろうさ。そしたらソチャでも振る舞わないのね。
That doesn't sound good.
は、了解しました。
私を手玉に取ったつもりかしら。やんちゃな子なんだから。
She's like a poor excuse of an evil character. She's like evil for, like, no evil reasons. With a demonic look on her face, Kasumi violently stamped her heel. She's just stubborn, you know? She's annoyingly stubborn. Has to get her way or whatever. I'll teach you about my magic of origins. No, I taught you before, right? And you used it before. Did you forget? You were also a witch apprentice, Ange, with your name entered into Mariage Sorcière, weren't you? Maria said all that at one point.
私も魔女に加えてもらったんだっけ。
I closed Maria's diary and flopped down on a very high-class looking bed. I had slept deeply for a long time in the car, so it took longer than usual for drowsiness to set in, and I read the diary as I waited. This was a super expensive hotel in the city. Since it was often used by the rich and the famous, they were very big on confidentiality. That made it very convenient for Ange to escape her pursuers. The idea that renegades should spend their nights hiding in cheap hotels is a commoner's way of thinking. To Ange, who possessed all the wealth of the Ushiromiya family, renegade life was comfortable indeed. Of course, even though he was a guard, Amakusa was a man and therefore in a separate room. Ange used the bedroom of the suite and Amakusa lay on the sofa in the living room. According to Amakusa, the sofas here were more pleasant than his own beds that had been recently. Poor guy. When I looked at the clock, I saw that it was almost 2 in the middle of the night. I'm still not getting sleepy. I sighed deeply. At that time, even though there was no wind, I had the feeling that Maria One-chan's diary fluttered. And there she is, in her witch form, and why did we just get a chime? What popped up here? Oh, I guess now she's connected on the Ange side as well. And I'm pretty sure this reads exactly the same as on the witch side here. I think it literally does, which I've already read this, so I think we're good there. One-chan appeared. Her form was no longer the normal one that I had known, excuse me. She was wearing the dress that Beatrice had given her after acknowledging her as a witch.
もう寝ないと明日が辛いよ。
私も魔女なら魔法が使えるのよね。
うん、使えるよ。教えてあげたでしょ、使い方。昔は使えたはずだよ。
覚えてる。使いたくなった。
寂しくなった？
別に毎日枕が違うくらいのことで辛くなんてならないわ。
魔法の最初の一歩は寂しいからとか退屈だからとか、そのくらいのささやかな理由でいいの。
眠くなるまでの暇つぶしだとしても。
うん、エンジェがもう一度魔法のことを思い出してくれて。
I wonder what sort of magic she used all the way back then. It's been quite a long time since I last used magic. At one point, with Maria One-chan's introduction, I touched a corner of it and opened the door a tiny bit. So I should still remember that sensation.
今のエンジェはかなり魔法の力が衰えてる。基本に忠実じゃないと難しいよ。
うん。四方を確認。静かな空間を確保。
天草さんは？
寝てるわ。
After opening the door to the living room a crack, I could see that the blanket caterpillar on the sofa rolled over in its sleep.
今のエンジェの弱い魔力では反魔法力の影響を受けすぎる。人の姿だけじゃない。声も音も気配さえもエンジェの魔法の邪魔をする。
I wonder if that's actually what prevented her from being able to see Maria with the book closed like she was trying to. Once she realized that she was back in the real world, or that's where she was, you know, reality exists all the time. When she heard voices or sounds or whatever, just that was enough to snap her back out of it.
それらを完璧に立って古代魔術師たちがアトリエを閉ざして孤独を守ったように。
覚えてるわ。人間の存在自体が魔法を妨げる。故に人に魔法を見せるということそのものがとても高位な魔女の証だったわね。
Obtain a quiet space for yourself alone. And that should be enough to prepare a space to use magic.
次によりしろ。今のエンジェには自転車の補助輪、いえチェーンくらい大事。
これは当然無理よね。
Ange rubbed her own head. She wore hair accessories there with pink gems attached. And they felt a little childish for Ange, but she never took them off, not even for a single day.
うん、今のエンジェにはとても無理。あの日から一日も休むことなく修行していたなら、あるいは今頃は呼び出すことができたかもしれないね。
今から修行したらどのくらいかかるの？
魔女の修行は幼き日の1年が老いの10年と同じ価値があると言われてる。
Oh boy.
相当の覚悟がいるよ。
それこそ後ろ宮金蔵くらいに？ピアノもバイオリンも魔法も幼い頃からの英才教育が大事なのね。
今のエンジェは初めて魔法を使えた時よりもその力が落ちている。無理をしないで基本に忠実に。
After stubbornly rubbing those things on my head one more time, I gave up. Then I started fishing through the knapsack, looking for anything that might make a good vessel.
これならよりしろにはぴったりじゃない？
What do we got?
懐かしい。それならば今のエンジェでも召喚できると思うよ。それには今主がいない。エンジェが新しい主になるのも可能なはず。
Among the things that looked like good vessels, I took the one I thought might possess the strongest magical power, and set it on the side table near the bed with a clutter. Or did I say clatter? I must know. It was a clatter. There we go. It was a shady-looking stake-shaped weapon, with an occult design inscribed on it. It was one of the 7 stakes of Purgatory, which the witch had used to offer sacrifices. When the police had been searching the family's possessions, they had collected a large amount of junk, and after the investigation had finished, these had been politely returned to the Ushiromiya family. Finding something that I had seen in the pictures of Maria's diary, I took it home with me. So what are we going to try and do with this thing?
煉獄の七杭はもともと7本で一揃いだった。気の毒にね、今はもう彼女1本だけ。
One-chan smiled, looking lonely. I pulled another book out of the knapsack. And this was also old-fashioned, and you could tell that it was an occult book just by looking. But its contents were plain. It was one of Maria One-chan's elaborate notebooks. This wasn't a diary. It's hard to really distinguish these because they use the same fucking book, art here. I don't know. That's just my little complaint. It is what it is. This was a grimoire, which she had written as a witch. The 7 stakes of Purgatory are Beatrice's furniture. Created by her and employed only for her sake, which one do we have right now? But since Beatrice is also a witch of Mariage Sorcière, they could be employed by Maria, a witch of the same alliance. For that reason, the method of summoning the 7 stakes of Purgatory and how to handle them was written about in great detail in Maria One-chan's grimoire. And, as another person with their name registered in that alliance, I was also permitted to employ them.
この杭は7姉妹の誰？
マリアの魔導書に彼女らの特徴がよく記されてるよ。七杭の姉妹は名前を間違えられることをとても嫌う。
I believe it.
召喚する前によく彼女らの名前を思い出して。
A packed page told of the 7 stakes of Purgatory. It described the 7 sisters in great detail. Yes, I think I memorized almost this entire page once in the past. The more I read it, the more I start to remember. And by the pictures and characteristics written on the grimoire, I could tell that the stake in my hand was Mamon's stake. In the past, I hadn't had any stakes, so I had summoned them without any vessel. So this was the first time I'd clearly seen any of the 7 stakes, let alone Mamon.
マモン、五女。7つの大罪の強欲を司る。すごい子よね。
強欲は向上心、上昇志向、生きる強さなども司る。決して悪い意味だけではないんだよ。口は悪いけど、とても頑張り屋さんな子だし。
そうね。欲がないってことは、つまり、生きてる理由がないってことだし。
For a while, I heightened my concentration and digested the information that was written about Mamon. The more the summoner knows about the target that's being summoned, the better. Knowledge is connected to magical power. I began to fill my head with knowledge about Mamon, raising a necessary amount of magical power for a summoning.
魔導書って、ちょっとだけ面白いわね。下手くそな小説を読むより、よっぽど面白いかもしれない。
Yeah, especially if you're into this sort of stuff, you know?
なんだか懐かしい気持ちになるわ。
魔導書はただ文字を読み取るだけじゃなく、行間から世界を膨らませたり、挿絵から世界を生み出したりと、様々な想像を要求されるの。生み出す力、これを持つエンジェになら、どんな本よりも魔導書は面白いはずだよ。エンジェになら理解できるってマリアはずっと知ってたもの。
マモンの知識、これで十分だと思うわ。うん。だいたい蘇った。やってみる。
しっかりね。 いざという時に備えて私の護符を。今の君は同盟の条約に守られてない。マモンは少し喧嘩っ早いところがある子。あるいはまだ恨んでるかも。
Bear a grudge, huh?
身につけることにする。
The Seven Stakes of Purgatory, as furniture used to make sacrifices for a ceremony, were treated as beings inferior even to weapons. But that was only when compared to other demons. To humans, furniture is something to be feared. I fished through the knapsack again, took out a bracelet charm with a scorpion medal that I had gotten from Maria One-chan long ago and put it on my arm. In the past, I hadn't needed something like this, but I need insurance.
大丈夫。それにはまだ十分な魔法防御が備わってる。
I'm pretty sure that charm is very, very similar to what she gives to Battler.
それを身につけている限り絶対に大丈夫。
Maria One-chan's magical power, which had been specially put into this charm, had been enough to earn even Beatrice's admiration. While it may have looked like something cheap to a human who couldn't understand magic, its magical worth was incalculable. Alright, here we go. It's summoning time. It's magic time.
さあさあ、おいでなさい。罪を許しなさい。煉獄の七杭が一つ。強欲のマモン。
Well, what do we got? I focused my mind. I made the magic repelling toxin that filled my body zero. Imagine an untainted vast space. Doubts and common sense all resist magic. Make the resistance zero and erase the burden on the magical power. Inside my head was the image of a vast space. It was a nighttime world where I floated in the air and the neon stars over the ground sparkled. A world where the stars that should have covered the sky were wiped away by the light from below that covered the ground. In the world of a vast night sky with no obstructions, I imagined the wind blowing through at will. At that time, in a room where there shouldn't have been any wind, the free nighttime wind kicked up a cyclone. The long-forgotten sensation raced through my entire body. It was the unique feeling of exultation, which comes from using magic. Mamon's stake, which I held out in my hand, gradually began to make me feel a pale light. A twisting cyclone with the stake at the center. The hefty stake floated a bit into the air.
見事だよ。ブランクは君から才能を奪わなかったね。
さあさあ、おいでなさい。罪を許しなさい。煉獄の七杭が一つ。強欲のマモン。その姿を私に見せなさい。
After I raised my hands bit by bit, lifting them higher than my head. As though it was being attracted upwards, Mamon's stake once again floated up high into the air and gradually began to shake. That shaking began to grow faster and then it burst. Oh shit. With a speed faster than the eye could follow, it flew around, violently rebounding off the walls of the room. The terrible sound of it dancing around threatened to make me flinch. However, I must not lose my mental concentration. Oh. Then, the stake, which had been flying around at an incredible speed, finally stopped and faced me. It was in the air, just a few centimeters away from my forehead, and held back by the defensive barrier created by the scorpion charm. I was gonna say, that's our insurance. It had tried to break the defensive barrier, eating into it with an incredible power, but Maria One-chan's barrier wouldn't be broken so easily.
無理か。食い破れない。
The stake muttered hatefully. It was probably safe to say that the scorpion charm saved me. Without that, my attempt at killing time until I got sleepy would have killed my time for all eternity. That's one way of putting it, I guess. And there she is. When Mamon's stake realized that it was unable to gouge me, it gave up and grew docile, changing its form from that of a stake into a human. There she is. Well, oh. Wow, a whole lot actually grew here on the on Ange's side. That's interesting. I mean, there's nothing over here on the witch side, so I guess now it's all over here on the Ange side. Okay, so I think we've read all of these. I don't think anything is different here, but here's the one that we just summoned. The one that is standing before us, Seven Sisters of Purgatory, fifth sister, Mamun. Let's go. In that same old outfit that I'd never be able to walk around outside in, although you could say it suited her in a demonic sort of way. That's what I'm saying.
エンジ様なの？随分とみすぼらしい魔力だけど、本当にエンジ様？
お久しぶりね、マモン。元気にしてた？
てっきり、もう約5面の家具は何度で朽ち果てるだけだと思ってました。それで、これはどういう余興で？まさか、私の所有者がエンジ様とでもおっしゃるつもりで？
うん、エンジが君の主人だよ。
マリア教、これはお見苦しいところ。先ほどの結界はマリア教の？
今のエンジじゃひょっとしたら君にやられてしまうかもしれないって思ったから護符を貸したの。
マリア教に私の主人がエンジ様だと言われたんじゃ。エンジ様、何なりとご命令を。私が必要とされるということは、新しい儀式を、新しい生贄を、もっとも私を使いこなし、自らの手を汚す程度の覚悟が終わりならぬ話ですが。
その役割は私はもう求めてないわ。
Yeah, no killing.
昔同様にただ話し相手になってくれるだけで十分よ。
ええ、それがお望みでしたら、家具は使われてこそ家具。お呼び出しいただいただけで光栄ですとも、エンジ様。
Mamun had a slightly complicated smile on her face. She accepted her new master because Maria had told her to, but it looked like she hadn't gotten over her discontent at working for Ange, with her frail magical power. Perhaps she had some other reason for hating Ange, but for now it seemed that she couldn't disobey, even if she wasn't happy about it.
それで、私は何をすれば？
わからない。適当に賑やかにしてくれればいいわ。昔みたいに。
お言葉ですが、多分、エンジ様がおっしゃる賑やかさとは、私たち姉妹の騒ぎのことだと思います。
Which seems to no longer be the case.
私一人では難しいかと。お忘れで？
そうだね。七姉妹はみんなが揃うと本当に賑やかだったもんね。でも今のエンジの魔力じゃマモンを呼び出すのが精一杯だと思う。他の6人の悔いも紛失してる。
恐れながらマリア教、私の悔いを経由し、七姉妹に語りかけ、呼び出すことは不可能ではないかと。
Can we do that?
私を刺激されるのでしたら、その程度の力は、エンジ様にはお持ちいただきたいところですが。
Mamun grinned. Apparently she wanted me to summon the other sisters without a vessel. I see. Since she's unable to satisfy herself with being summoned alone, she's asking for the other sisters to be summoned as well. I get it. Greed. Yeah, she was like this back then, wasn't she? To furniture, the times during which they are used are bliss. No matter how badly they are exploited, being used is furniture's joy. On the contrary, regardless of how nice you are to them, not being given a job is more painful than anything in their eyes. Mamun spoke in a challenging way, but she wanted me to summon the other sisters somehow and rescue them from the world of nothingness. If that's the case, all she's got to do is say so. These demon people can never just say what they mean.
エンジ、無理しないで。マモンを呼び出せただけでリハビリには十分だよ。
あら、一人だけでリハビリになっちゃうの？どうせ暇つぶしよ。いいわ、マモン。乗りかかった船だわ。呼べるところまで呼んであげる。
本当に？さすがエンジ様！さあさあ、早く早く！
Apparently, even though she had asked, Mamun hadn't really expected Ange to do this. She hopped around, badgering Ange to summon the other sisters. Summoning Mamun alone consumed a considerable amount of physical and magical power. It'll probably be pretty tough to do 6 more. I'm awed by the magical power of those who can summon sisters like this at will with a snap of their fingers, and who therefore reach the level where they can be called witches.
マモン、エンジェに無理をさせないで。エンジェはまだ本調子じゃないから。
エンジ様はみんなを召喚してくれるって言いました？
Actually, I only said I'd call as many as I could. I guess that's greed for you.
無理しないで、エンジェ。もう今日は休んだ方がいい。君は十分疲れてるよ。
いいわよ。どうせ暇つぶし。ばったり寝込めるくらいに疲れさせてもらうわ。
This time, there's no vessel. I'll have to strengthen the image from my knowledge of the grimoire and materialize them with just that. I held my hands out into the air, replaying in my head the sensation from when I had summoned Mamon. I'm acquainted with all of the Seven Sisters, right? I've got to remember that time long ago when I talked with them. Once again, the power of magic began to fill me up. It let off a faint and yet distinct pale light from both of my hands.
エンジ様、しっかりしっかり頑張って。ねえマリア卿、エンジ様は必ずみんなを呼び出してくださいますよね。また7姉妹は再会できますよね。ね。
うん、きっとね。でもそれが今夜という保証はないよ。
エンジ様ならできますって。エンジ様お願い。末っ子のアスモから。
アスモデウス7女。わかった。末っ子から順番に呼ぶわ。
I don't know if beforehand we actually addressed them by their names. I think it was actually based off of the sins, you know? So I actually cannot remember, but I don't ever remember referring to any of them in general. A strand of hot sweat dripped down from my forehead. This really is going to be one hell of a burden to carry. Yeah, she's got this. I don't know how she's got this, but she's got this. Oh shit. The pale light in this space began to slowly form into the outline of a girl.
さあさあ、おいでなさい。煉獄の七杭が一つ。色欲のアスモデウス。
And there was no vessel. However, as I held a strong conviction that she definitely did exist there as a core, her form began to crystallize. Her outline became distinct, and the form of the youngest of the Seven Sisters, Asmodeus, was finally created. There she be. And she's not trying to kill us.
ここはどこ？私は生きてるの？アスモ！よかった。マモン姉さん、ここは一体私を呼び出したのは誰なの？
エンジ様が私たちをみんな蘇り。
No, I didn't.
エンジ様、ありがとう。次はベルゼをお願いします。
ベルゼブブ6条。暴食のベルゼブブ。
Maybe we did know.
さあさあ、おいでなさい。
Because I remember Beelzebub. At this rate, I wonder how many I'll be able to summon. If I can't focus, this is probably it. I'm pretty sure the names were known even back then. The pale light made an outline and formed into Beelzebub.
暴食のベルゼブブ、ここに。ベルゼー！エンジ様、すごいすごい！
Mamon and Asmodeus jumped onto Beelzebub, celebrating the reunion. I think just individually, you know, I think is the problem. It was always pretty much the collective, except for the first sister. I don't remember which one it was. I don't know if it was Wrath or some shit, but she was the one that was fighting Kanun in episode 3. So there was a little bit of individuality that we were seeing in episode 3, but still at the end of the day, they were all pretty much lumped together as the Seven Sisters of Purgatory. I'd summoned 3 people at once. My head was throbbing. Gotta summon the next one without stopping for a break.
さあさあ、おいでなさい。煉獄の七杭が一つ。怠惰のペルフェゴール。
Yeah, I'm pretty sure the names were known. Like, absolutely.
ここに。なんと、私がまだ必要とされると。
ベルフェネー！お腹すいた！じゃなくて、また会えて嬉しい！また7姉妹みんなが再会できるなんて、
I like how Beelzebub completely had the wrong emotion going on.
この調子で次はサタンネオベビアネーモルシネーモ
It's Lucifer. That was the one that fought
分かって
Kanun.
るわ。だからお願い、あまりうるさくしないで。4人同時は結構きつい。
エンジ、もうそれ以上無理をしないで。これだけ久しぶりなのによく4人も召喚できたよ。
よせマモン、今のエンジェ様には我らの召喚は負担を強いている。エンジェ様、どうかご無理をなされませんよ。
私は嫌。エンジ様は約束したもん。また私たちみんなと遊んでくれるって。
No,
ねえエンジ様、みんなとまた会えるって。すぐに会えるって約束した。
そうね、約束したわ。すぐにがいつのこととは約束しなかったけど、確かに私は約束したわ。
だから守って。じゃないと私は今日までそれを忘れていたエンジェ様を許さない。
さあさあ、
oh, she's gonna keep going.
煉獄の七悔の一つ、憤怒のサタン。
Okay, so Satan is wrath. My mind is getting hazy, but I'll call. Even though I'd forgotten about those days, even though I've never thought of that time as anything but sad and lonely, because the short time I spent with them was fun without a doubt.
憤怒のサタン、ここに。
何やってるのよあんたたち。私たちが井戸端会議をするだけでどれだけエンジェ様に負担をかけてるか分かってんの？
Oh, you have, you quite literally see the problem here, you know? You have a lot of reasoning. Satan, who had apparently figured out the situation immediately after being summoned, cried out in a loud voice, telling her sisters off. That loud voice made my consciousness hazy again.
私たちはベアトリーチェ様より休むことを許された役目を終えた家具なのよ。再びお役に立てる機会を賜るどころか新しい主人の負担になるなんて、そんなの家具の直れ。早く姿を消しなさい。
うん、サタンネーの言う通りだ。姿を消す。お前たちも姿を消せ。それがこの瞬間一番エンジェ様のお役に立てる。
私は嫌よ。みんなを呼び出してもらえるまでは嫌。私も嫌。お腹すいた。じゃなくて
Yeah, she's really mixing up her emotions there.
もう帰るなんて嫌。
わがまま言ってんじゃないわよ。ほらとっとと姿を消す。ほらアスもさっさと消えなさい。
サタン姉さんがいじめた。いつも末っ子からなんてずるい。
実に賑やかね。退屈しない。
もう十分だよ。今のエンジェには限界を超えてる。
そう。
But she's gonna keep going, isn't she? With 5 of them summoned and messing around as they pleased, the load was just too far heavy for me, with the meager magical power I had at that moment. This is it. Oh, yep. As my consciousness went hazy, I fell over onto the bed. Well, good night, world. Have beds always felt this soft? It seemed that the sisters were still squabbling together as much as they liked. For a way to kill time until drowsiness comes to get me, this is enough. Feeling something warm and nostalgic in the sisters' liveliness, I sank into a world of deep sleep. This was very interesting. We really are mixing what we have known about witches and magic and all that into the current world, you know? At the entrance to my dream world, I felt Maria One-chan and Sakutaro waiting to receive me.
お疲れ様。そして頑張ったね。ウリュウ。
God damn it.
おかえり、エンジェ。
I can't take that shit serious. Welcome back, huh? Then I should respond like this. I'm home. Yeah, fuck reality. Fuck things making sense. The magic world is the world for me, baby. That's all I need. That's right. Just once in the past, I underwent training in order to step into the world of witches. I accepted that the only power that could save me from those sad, painful days at St. Lucia Academy was the thing called magic, and I received Maria's introduction to the basics.
広大な空間をイメージ。峠のドライブインから麓を見下ろした時の風景。
So her training was already when she was in school. It wasn't whenever they were alive. The family, that is. I projected that scene from a memory into my mental world. Normal girls get over their fascination with magical girls when they leave elementary school. So seriously training to use magic at this age was embarrassing even for me. But even that embarrassed feeling felt pleasant to me now. Right then, I was learning mental concentration from Maria One-chan in order to use magic. But it wasn't going very well. It was about as hopeless as teaching a person to wiggle their ears by showing them, and expecting to learn anything at all from their demonstration. It seems that you need to imagine a vast space to gain the mental concentration for using magic. So I remembered the time from my younger days when my family had gone on a small vacation, when I had looked down towards the base from a viewing platform at a rest stop on a peak, and I tried painting this scene in my mental world.
まだまだ狭い。もっともっと広い空間をイメージして、そしてエンジェだけの心象世界を作り上げるの。まだまだイメージが霞んでる。空気に温度もないし、風もない、匂いもない。まだまだ世界が希薄。それらは後でもいいから、今はとにかくもっと広い世界をイメージして。
ウリュウ、どうして広い空間のイメージが必要なの？
人間の体内には生まれながらにして魔法を妨げる毒素があるんだよ。
Yes, the sense of reason.
その毒素を浄化しないと魔法はうまく使えないの。そのために有効な方法の一つが広大な空間をイメージすることなんだよ。
さっきは飛行機の窓から見た世界を思い描いたけど、それもダメだったわ。もっと広大な世界なんて見当もつかない。
ならマリアの持つ広大な世界をエンジェにも教えてあげればいいよ。そしたらエンジェにもイメージがしやすくなるんじゃない？ウリュウ。
そうね。私もお姉ちゃんはどんな世界をイメージして魔法を使ってるのか興味があるわ。私もそれを参考にする。
ダメだよ。心象世界は広大で、そして孤独じゃないといけないの。自分以外に一切遮るものがない世界。だからその世界を人に教えたら、その世界は孤独ではなくなってしまう。
Right, you've invited somebody to it so that they can actually see the idea that you come up with.
心象世界は誰にも明かしちゃダメなの。だからエンジェも上手に心象世界を描けたら、それは自分だけの秘密の世界にするんだよ。
ウリュウ、マリアケチンボ。
ありがとう、サク太郎。修行に近道なしってわけだわ。努力してみる。大丈夫。ヒントは十分もらえてるわ。
ウリュウ、エンジェ、頑張れ。
Until recently, I thought that there was no way something like magic could save me. After all, magic doesn't exist in this world. That kind of thing's supposedly nothing more than an illusion, a delusion, a daydream. However, Maria One-chan showed me that she could fill her own world with happiness using a power that's impossible for me. I used to look down on that happiness as something empty, because I didn't believe in magic. I also denied everything else, refusing to believe in the happiness that magic gave birth to. But slowly, bit by bit, Maria One-chan's world grew happier. In the past, I had disparaged it, thinking it too painful to look at. But that might have been nothing more than jealousy. I was forced to admit that. And now, this was my first step in my search for happiness. A vast space, a dry wind that could blow without being blocked by anything. Let me feel that wind blowing through my own hair. You know, I'm just thinking, like, I have a feeling that we're kind of repeating episode 3 in a way, you know? Where magic is slowly being introduced in a new form to us, you know? We're being pulled into the idea that magic is a saving force, and therefore it's real. we're accepting it into our lives, kind of like how Battler, sure, he was trying to deny a lot of what was happening, but he believed in Beatrice and Virgilia at points throughout episode 3. And here we have Ange trying to accept magic within her, trying to even use it, and is also accepting Maria, who is now herself a witch. We're trusting the wrong people here and kind of going against what we should be, accepting. But also Ange has accepted Bernkenstill in order to be able to work as Gretel. So it's hard to, it's hard to find a good middle ground here. There's a lot of contradiction. I see, even the ground might get in my way as I am now. Then I don't need a ground. Brush the ground away, downwards, downwards. Make that cityscape. Or just nothing, In other words, it was though I had floated up, leaving the ground far behind. After pushing the ground further and further downwards, the ground grew foggy and faint, and for the first time, it began to feel like the sky. That's pretty cool. I dig that. Then I understood its vastness. In that instant, I felt the vivid wind go right through even my body. In other words, blowing through me without any resistance.
そう、その感覚を維持して。
ええ、わかる。すべての妨げから解放されてるのがわかる。
やったエンジェ、やったエンジェ、魔女の世界への最初の第一歩を踏み出した。
これが魔女の世界。
うん。じゃあエンジェがずっと望んできた魔法を練習してみよう。お友達を呼び出す魔法。エンジェを寂しさから救い出してくれる味方を作り、それによって幸せになる魔法を。
エンジェにも僕みたいなお友達が呼び出せるの？うりゅうりゅう。
今のエンジェにはゼロの海からサクタロほどの友達を呼び出すにはまだ。最初は呼び出しやすい友達から練習しよう。
The idea of a sea of zero basically making something out of nothing, it's kind of reminding me of Chaos Head's whole idea of being able to use delusions to create something.
最初は何を？
エンジェはマリアージュ・ソルシエールの魔女だから、同盟の魔女が刺激する存在はエンジェもまた刺激することが許されてる。例えばサクタロは私の友達だけど、同じ同盟のエンジェにとっても友達で、そして今度試しにサクタロを呼び出してみて。寂しくて辛い時、サクタロがきっと元気づけてくれるよ。
I see. You could call Sakutaro a being employed by One-chan. So as a witch in the same alliance as her, it's possible for me to summon Sakutaro too. I met Sakutaro's gaze. How pleasant it would be to have him just being there by my pillow. So he could talk to me a bit on lonely nights.
私が呼びかけたら、あなたは現れて話し相手になってくれる？
うりゅう、エンジェが呼び出してくれるのを楽しみにしてる。うりゅうりゅうりゅう。
Looking happy, Sakutaro pressed his head against me like a cat. Suddenly getting a cute younger brother felt a bit confusing, a bit embarrassing, and a bit nice. Unable to understand why I couldn't honestly accept this feeling, I felt tears well up in my eyes.
お姉ちゃん、私頑張るわ。
じゃあ練習をしてみよう。同じ同盟の魔女ベアトリーチェの家具を呼び出してみよう。
ベアトリーチェの家具。
Hearing Beatrice's name gave me a slightly strange feeling. When it came to the crime on Rokkenjima, the public kept going on in a frenzy about how it was a sacrifice ceremony performed by a witch. And that witch was Beatrice. So if the witch did commit that crime, that would make her the culprit who stole my family from me. However, Maria One-chan said that Beatrice was a good witch. If I held negative emotions towards Beatrice, she'd get mad, leading to a nasty fight and refuse to talk for a while. At this moment, One-chan was my only close friend. So to avoid worsening her mood, I decided to think of Beatrice as nothing more than One-chan's magic teacher. Also, I believe that the crime was a conspiracy cooked up by Aunt Ava, I would definitely expose the truth about that someday.
エンジ、また体内に妨げが混じってるよ。
ごめんなさい。集中を書いたわ。もう一度。
I'd expect no less from you, One-chan. You instantly noticed that I was being overcome with idle thoughts. After shaking my head just once, I reimagined the wind blowing through a vast space.
煉獄の七姉妹。
Oh yeah.
なんだか物騒な名前ね。
Oh yeah.
でも、とっても賑やかで楽しい子たちだよ。
And that's one way to put
エン
it.
ジェの新しいお友達になってくれるかもしれない。まずは、私が呼び出してみせるね。見てて。
Maria One-chan lifted both hands up to the level of her head and quietly unified her mind. The state I wasn't able to reach except by mediating for a long period of time, she reached in the span of a few quick breaths. Then a pale light began to gather in her palms, and one by one the girls began to show themselves. Oh, here we go. All 7 of them. 1, 2, 3 people, 4, 5, 6, 7 people. The way they were summoned one after another in a line was a masterpiece. Incredible. Just like the illustrations in One-chan's grimoire, the Seven Sisters of Purgatory. The younger sisters were behind the eldest, Lucifer, who saluted One-chan.
煉獄の七姉妹、ここに。
Oh yeah, they're here alright, and we are out of time. Interesting stuff here. It is. I do believe another way to look at what's going on here is that Ange is losing her mind. You know, I don't really know the timeline of events. I feel like we're jumping around quite a bit. Maybe I'm overthinking it because we were beginning the 4th game, you know, the story that's going to be held over on Rokkenjima, and Ange was going to take place, but then she walked out, and then she met up with Maria, and then they went back to Maria's past, and then Maria became a witch, and now we're back here to present day, and are we in present day now? Because now we're back at the past when Ange first learned about the 7 sisters, and we're jumping around a bit, I feel. Or maybe I am overthinking it. I don't know. But we'll wrap it up here. And I would just like to say that, yeah, I do think that Ange is losing her mind. Loneliness may be pushing her to the direction that Kinzo went into. Maybe. I really don't know. But at least this video made a little bit more sense than the previous. Still a lot of confusing questions, but nothing too crazy this time around. Thank you all for tuning in. I hope you all enjoyed. If you did, be sure to leave a like, subscribe for more, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Take it easy.